5 Steps to Becoming an IT Contractor or Interim Professional, brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent. Thank you.
Welcome to Leaders Path, a leadership and recruitment blog delivering wide-ranging content that will help you be a great leader. Brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent, management and leadership recruitment specialists.
Welcome to another episode of Leaders Path, brought to you by Middleton's Assured Talent. Today we're going to be sharing with you our 5 steps to becoming an IT contractor or interim professional. Becoming a contractor in all professional fields. I don't think this advice limits itself just to IT. So whether it's finance, business change, it's much similar advice really. So to gather this information, I've gone to my own experience, but also spoken to all the contractors that work for me. So they've given me their views on the pros, the cons, the approach that you need to take, and I've put it all together into this blog. And I suggest you do the same. I think it's important that you, if you're thinking about this as a career, that you do speak to people that are currently working or have worked as contractors and get their view, and they'll give you a sense of whether it feels for you or not. And really, that's the first step: is deciding is it a career for you? Is that a way of working that's going to suit you? There's obviously a list of pros and cons. The pros, and the most obvious one that I think probably is the biggest motivator for most people, is the financial reward. It's fairly safe to say that most contract roles will pay considerably better in equivalent terms to the permanent role. There's a bit more complexity to that because you don't get paid holidays and sick and the benefits that you get from a permanent role. But it's safe to say that you will earn more money by being a contractor, and there's more tax incentives to available to limited company contractors. You get much more control of your career, or certainly perceived control over it. You can choose your next engagement. You can take your career in certain directions that might not be as easy to do while working permanently for one organisation. You get to take breaks if you want to. You can have breaks in between engagements. So if working 9 months of the year and then 3 months enjoying yourself somewhere is the lifestyle you want to lead, that's very much available as a contractor. And really the kind of the standard working day can look a bit different as a contractor. Sometimes good and sometimes bad. Employers can expect a lot, or companies can expect a lot from their contractors to earn their money. You get the benefit of learning lots about new places, new environments, new ways of doing things, getting to meet lots of people. You'll do that at a frequency that's far greater than the typical person in a permanent role. And there's potentially the opportunity to travel and work in different places, in the UK and abroad. But the cons, I guess the biggest one is the instability, or the potential instability. Every 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever it is, you're potentially going to be out there looking for a new job, and you don't know how long that search might take. You don't know what the market might do in that time. At the end of the day, most contractor engagements, have clauses that allow the company to terminate that contract within a week, so you can be out of work very quickly. The other factor of that is that you're going to have to do a lot more job seeking, job applications, interviewing, etc., than you would typically do as a permanent employee. And I know that's something that some, maybe a lot of us, don't really enjoy doing. So it's definitely a big factor to consider. You're responsible for your own learning and development. You're responsible for your own financial planning. You don't get a pension. You've got to look after that yourself. And the other thing, being in an environment as a contractor, you can get treated quite differently. Now, the upside is you can avoid the office politics, because you're there to do a job, and then you go home and you can leave work where it belongs, at work. The other side is, if you're someone that enjoys, being part of a team, being part of the kind of the culture of an organisation, sometimes contractors are kind of kept at arm's distance. Not always, but sometimes. So again, that's an element that some people don't enjoy. And I think sometimes people feel that they work very hard to deliver a piece of work in a contract, and then they leave the organisation and they don't really get to see what the benefit was that they drove by doing a good job. But again, that's just part of it. It's about delivering the objective that you're set, doing it as well as you possibly can, and then you move on to the next thing. So once you've understood that contracting is the move that you want to make, you want to have a career as a contractor. The next thing is to understand what the market's like for your skills and experience. And you really got to understand how buoyant that market is. Is there a demand? Where is that demand? Is it close to home or is it far away? What do the rates look like? So what sort of financial return am I going to get from becoming a contractor in my field of specialism? What are the trends? Is the market getting better or worse? What are the threats? Is there legislation change around the corner that will eradicate that market, or is the legislation change that will create a huge demand for my skill set? It's really important you kind of create that picture just so you can get a comfort for the immediate opportunity, but also the kind of maybe medium to long term opportunity for being a contractor in your skill set. To do that, to find all that information out, I would say speak to recruiters, speak to specialists like myself. We'll be able to tell you what the market looks like. Look at job boards, see what jobs are out there being advertised. It's a fairly good barometer of the market and your skill set. Speak to specialist accountants who are very much set up to look after contractors. They might have a little bit less market information specific to your area because they'll tend to work with contractors in a number of different skills areas. But they'll certainly be able to give you some sense. They might be able to give you a sense as well of legislation change that may affect your earnings as a contractor and being set up as a contractor. Speak to other contractors in your market, as I mentioned earlier, people that you know, people that you work with, to see what they feel it's like, what the opportunity is. And the other thing, there's quite a lot of online forums and blogs that are set up to advise contractors. There's probably quite a lot of relevant information from there. What you could do, and some people do then, is create a SWOT analysis to present all that information in it. And again, just take that step back and decision again, does contracting feel like it's for me, and is the opportunity there to make a career of it? Once you've made that decision, it's then biting the bullet and going for it. So step 3 is the first step to becoming a contractor, and there's a number of these. This slightly influenced by what your current working situation is. The easiest entry into contracting is either you've received redundancy, or you've taken voluntary redundancy, or you've already left your job. If you take redundancy, or you've got that nest egg typically behind you sometimes. And your availability is clear because you'll have an end date or you will have already finished your role. Availability has a big impact to what you do next. If you're in a job that's on, you've got to give 3 months notice, the likelihood is you're going to have to give that notice before you start looking for a contract. Now, if you're on a month's notice, there may be some contract roles that you can go and apply to and you could be considered for. But again, more often, companies are looking for people to start anything from days to a few weeks from the point of them going and recruiting for the role. So as I say, that means that you may well have to bite the bullet and resign before you have a job to go to. So go and do that if you need to, if you're confident to do that. If you don't, if you feel there's opportunities out there that can wait, the next thing then is to find the job before you make that resignation. So first bit of that, update your CV, make sure it's as pertinent as possible to the type of roles that you're applying for. Be ready to write a few CVs. Sometimes the nuances of the different areas that you could apply your skills to, having a CV ready for each of those nuances is well worth doing. There's the CV writing blog that I've shared previously. That CV writing blog is a little bit more focused on a permanent CV, but the core principles are the same. Although I think you, with a contract CV, make all the projects that you've worked on as pertinently and as clear as possible. And your profile at the beginning is probably just that bit more specific and narrow to the skills that you're marketing yourself for a contract role. But I don't think it will vary massively. But get your CV ready. And then start the legwork of job searching. So that includes speaking to specialist recruiters like myself, applying to jobs and job adverts on the job boards, uploading your CV to the relevant job boards. The easiest thing to do is just search the type of job you're looking for and the location in Google, and that will typically bring up results of the different boards that seem to be catering for your skill sets. And then networking with other contractors and just generally networking, getting out there and telling people that you're looking for a contract job, thinking of previous managers that you've worked for, previous people that you've worked alongside. Where are they now? Might they be able to recommend you into places? There's a huge amount of the market that is still through agencies, but undoubtedly there's 20% in the market that is for contractors that are directly hired or directly engaged, I should say, through people's networks. So make sure you're utilising your network. So you've, I suppose one other thing to remember in that job searching is that the contract market moves much, much quicker than the permanent one. So the point of a role going live to the point where, the CV deadline is passed and they won't accept any more applications is a lot shorter. So literally 2 days from it going live, sometimes the clients sort of received enough CVs and that's it, they're making a decision. So be ready to react quickly and also be prepared. And I think this also ties into your availability from, finishing your previous job point of view, prepared that you might need to interview at short notice. So absolutely be ready to attend an interview tomorrow, the day after, because that's quite common. Then you're well on the way in securing your next engagement. And I think another thing you do alongside, doesn't have to be at the same time or after that you've secured a role, but I absolutely recommend that you're speaking to a specialist accountant. There's a number of contractor accountants out there that are their day in day out job is looking after people who work under a limited company. Go and speak to one or two of those and start getting an understanding of the different options available to you. They'll be able to advise you whether an umbrella company or setting up a limited company is the best option for you. Very typically, if you're dipping your toe into the contractor market, an umbrella company might be easier because you don't have to set anything up. You just join someone else's umbrella as an employee. You get paid through that umbrella, and you can leave it at the point of the contract ending. Whereas if you set up a limited company, there's more obligations that, if you decide to go back to a permanent role, there's more sort of administrative tasks to actually close that company down, and there's more obligations in general with a limited company. But the upside is that you can there's a lot more tax breaks through doing business that way. And certainly most, if not all, contractors that see this as a career would go down the limited company route. A good, specialist accountant will go through the full setup process with you. They'll usually have packages where you pay a bit up front to get all the companies set up, get all the various different documentation that you need, and then you will typically pay anything between, I think for good ones, anything between 150 to 200, maybe 250, including VAT, per month for a good accountant to basically look after absolutely everything for you. Now that might seem a lot, but in my own experience, it makes life a lot easier, and often they can really create a lot of efficiencies from a tax point of view that maximizes your earnings. So they can, in some ways they make your life easier and potentially pay for themselves and the tax savings that they may create. So I definitely recommend that you do speak to someone. Just going specifically into the things that you'll need to do in terms of setting up a company, you need to decide on a name, you need to make sure it's available. On the written blog that I'll share with us, there's a link that you can go to for Companies House. You need to register your business for VAT, presuming that you're going to be VAT registered, which a lot of limited company contractors are. Same with corporation tax, national insurance, PAYE. You need to get all these things registered with HMRC. You need to open a business bank account. Be prepared that won't be a quick process. Certainly, in my experience, not as quick as you would expect from a personal bank. And also, you typically will need the registration of your business document to open up the bank account in your business's name. So it can be a slight delay in doing that. One other thing to be noticed to do really is shop around, because business banking is not free. As we're used to personal banking being free, business banking isn't. What you'll find is a number of the big banks offer incentives where you get a year's free banking or 2 years free banking. So you can shop around and see what's available, but just also double check with them what their lead time is for the bank being up and running, because you can't be paid until that is live. The other thing you need to do is decide how you're going to keep track of your account. Some people use an Excel spreadsheet. Other people will use tools available now quite cheaply like Xero or Receipt Bank. Again, something your accountant can talk through with you. And then the other element is professional indemnity and public liability insurance. There's a bit of kind of grey area about what level you might need. In my experience, different clients ask for different levels of protection from their contractors, and that can be anything from 100,000 up to 2 million. It's not. It depends on what level you need. It's a cost usually in the hundreds. So just be aware that's an upfront cost you need to pay. But what you might also find is some of the specialist contractors offer insurance as part of their standard packages. So it's another thing to ask of the contractor. Of the accountant. Final thing is just do some reading on IR35, read the blogs, understand the pitfalls, understand the things to look out for and how you're engaged and how you kind of are in principle managed in the environment you go to work in, as well as the contract document yourself. Again, a good accountant can give you some advice. Some of them will sell you IR35 insurance to say that if you are ever investigated, the insurance will cover your loss of earnings and any kind of well, I don't think they pay damages, but they'll cover some of your losses. Make a call on whether that's worthwhile or not, but certainly just make yourself aware of IR35 and its implications. So you've gone through that, you've secured your first contract, and the fourth step is really thinking about starting your first contract. It's going to look, and feel different from any permanent induction or starting point that you've had previously, and quite often there's not going to be an induction. And in reality, from an IR35 point of view, you kind of don't want it to be an induction or something that looks and feels like a permanent employee's starting point. You're going to be thrown in the deep end, and you've got to be prepared to swim. The key thing with contractors is they're paying a lot of money for you to come in very quickly and deliver something as quickly as possible, and that's part. That can be quite apparent at that starting point. I would recommend that you start with a clear list of things that you want to go and find out to allow you to be able to very quickly be effective in the role. Don't expect that list to be already written for you. Things that I think you need to understand very quickly are, what is your clear objective in the role? It's really important that you understand from day one what it is they're expecting you to do and what the output is. Who are the key stakeholders? And go and introduce yourself to them as soon as possible. Some of this stuff can be done before you start. Sometimes you might have that contact with the line manager beforehand. See if you can get this information before, so you're as prepared as possible. But more often than not, this is in your first week. Systems access and who to go to if there's any problems. What the working hours expectations are, generally what the working, the rules of the office are. If there's another contractor there, ask them. Sometimes the expectation of the contractor is different from the permanent staff. So if there's someone, that's been there a little while, they'll be able to give you that picture of, what is expected of you. Another critical one is who signs the timesheets and what's the process from that point of view. You're not going to get paid until you've got a signed timesheet to say that you've done the hours that you've done. So I think from day one, it's really important you understand what that process is, so that you can be confident that once the work's done, you're getting paid at the end of the week or the month or whatever frequency your payment is. Once you've got that all clear, it's really just a case of getting your head down and getting on with it. Successful contractors understand that the more value you add in any one engagement, the more stable your contracting career is. So the better a job that you do, the more likely people are going to speak highly of you and recommend you to other places, and that will help you in the stability of your career. And I think the other thing is you've got to be prepared to roll your sleeves up and perhaps do things that may seem below the level of the role that you feel you should be at. But again, it's just about getting things done, and the more you do that, the better it is for you. And then the final bit of this early adoption to contracting is just don't get involved in office politics. As a contractor, you can float above it, and you can go home at night and not have to worry about who's saying what and who's doing what, and the pressures that often are there in working environments. I think the other thing is if you avoid getting involved in politics, you often avoid creating enemies, which again will very much play into your stability as in your career as a long-term contractor. So really important. And then one final one is as soon as you start earning, start saving. All good contractors, and your accountant will tell you the same, that you really from day one need to be putting a percentage of your earnings or your revenue away for the breaks that you might have in between, whether they're breaks by choice or just because there's not a job out there. So from day one, factor away money for these breaks, and for things like pension, things like in principle holidays or sick days. Just put a percentage of your revenue to one side in a business savings account. That's money for a rainy day. And then the kind of final piece is step 5 is just maintaining that contracting career. You come to an end of your first engagement. The contracting life is for you. You're now going to be starting to focus on what's on the short term. What's the process I need to go through to gain my next engagement, but also in the long term, what do I need to do to make this a long term career for me as a contractor? So short term, I would say 6, maybe 4 weeks before the end of your current engagement, start speaking to whether it's you've got a line manager, whether you've got a contractor coordinator, whether and also your recruiter if there's an agent involved, and ask them the question if you're going to be extended. You may not get an answer. There may not be any commitment. You might be on your last day before you get a piece of paper with a signed extension, but it's worthwhile starting the conversation as early as possible. It's really important to be aware, though, that they may say, yes, definitely an extension coming, but until you've got a piece of paper in your hand that's to be signed that says there's an extension, it doesn't exist. So you've got to make sure you're covering all angles. And by that, I would mean, about the same time frame, 6 to 4 weeks before the end, make sure your CV's up to date with the most recent engagement, start getting it out to your network, start getting it to recruitment agents, and start getting it on the various job boards to make sure that opportunities are starting to come to you. It's okay if an agent phones you can explain the situation. We're very used to speaking to candidates about a role where they may potentially have an extension on the table. We're still happy to present them for positions because that's just part of the market. They may not get that extension, and they may be perfect for the role that we're presenting them to. The other thing to do is make sure they understand your availability, though. So if it's 4 weeks, let them know it's 4 weeks, because that could influence whether you can be considered for a job or not. If you want to finish one contract on a Friday and then be starting your next one the next Monday, the one point to consider in that process is how you're going to interview. Can you get time off from your current engagement to interview? Are you going to be able to interview out of hours? Just have a think about how that might work. It often means that people wait till they finish before they start interviewing for next roles. Well, it depends really, but it's just worth being mindful of that. And the other thing is, in every single contract, make sure you're constantly building your network, taking contact details of people you're meeting and people you're having working relationships with, because they could be valuable to you. They will be valuable to you in the future. So just be very conscious of always be building your network. And then the long-term thoughts in terms of making sure you've got that long-term career as a contractor. Take responsibility for your learning development. Make sure that you are developing your skills and keeping an eye on the marketplace and the way things are going. The last thing you want to do is end up with a skill set that suddenly becomes irrelevant or out of date. So take responsibility for that learning and knowledge growth. Some contractors are in a position where they can pick and choose the different contracts that they work on, which one will benefit the most from a learning point of view. It's great if you can do that. It's not always possible, but again, just be mindful of that long-term market, long-term career aspect of contracting. Your reputation is critical. Always be mindful of that. If you create a bad reputation in an engagement, word will spread. If you terminate early for no reason, if you don't show commitment, if you don't deliver what you said you were going to deliver, or if you've misled in terms of your abilities around certain things, it will be attached to you somewhere along the line. That will come out. So just be very conscious of your reputation, and do all you can to maintain that, because it has huge value to you as a contractor. The plus side is the true. If you do a great job, if you add value, if you roll your sleeves up, if you always do more than is expected of you, the opportunities that will be available to you every time you look will be far, far greater. And take breaks. It's really important that you keep healthy and take breaks. Contractors are allowed holidays during contracts. It's not a written rule that you're not, or an unwritten rule that you're not. Just be open with your, the line manager or coordinator. Pre-plan holidays and tell them when they're going to be. Be mindful of project delivery dates, etc. But take breaks when you can. Take breaks in between contracts if you can, because it can't all be work, and it does have an influence on how effective you are if you're just constantly exhausted because you've not had any time out. Some people worry that if they're off, they're not getting paid, but I would say just calculate your daily rate and then factor in a percentage of that goes towards a holiday payment fund, much like the kind of rainy day fund I mentioned earlier. And the other thing is just think about your long-term financial security. You don't have a company that's creating a pension for you, so make sure you're looking after those things yourself. Speak to a financial advisor. You potentially be having a greater income than you've had previously. Consider these things and make the most. It's kind of making hay when the sun shines. There is this now a great opportunity for contractors to make a very good living. We don't know what 10 years down the line will look like. So just be mindful that things can change and just plan accordingly. So I've written this all out in quite a detailed form. I hope this hasn't been too long. I've tried to be quite comprehensive to help people make that decision and that transition effectively. If you've any questions, you can get in touch with me. I deliver to contracts across IT and business change. If you work in those fields, feel free to share your CV with me. I've got associates that deliver across other areas like finance and other business operations areas. So again, if you're in those areas and looking for a job, just get in touch and I'll see how I can help. And that's at talent@middletonsassured.com. That's talent@middletonsassured.com. Excellent. All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. For more great content like this, follow us on YouTube.